Episode. Today I'm gonna look at the source code of Arel. Arel is a library that converts Ruby on Rails' popular active record Ruby code into SQL for different databases. Sorry. This is the Arel source code, and what you see here is there are some things that look familiar, like there's a class called table, there's a tree manager, there's a select manager, update manager. You can imagine those. For example, if you look at select manager, you can imagine that this is a CRUD operation for select, and select has methods like limit, constraints, offset, skip, as you'd expect, lock, and then group. So essentially operations you can do on a select. When I was reading this code, I found this code to be beautifully object-oriented code, but I found a little gem in here. That's what I'm going to focus my efforts on today. So on my right hand side, what you see is a typical Rails code where we are saying that person.all.toSQL, and this is what Arel gives you. You can actually, instead of calling that, you can also call it .arel.toSQL, and you are going to get this SQL as well. So now, interestingly, I found while looking at the source code, there's a method called toDot, which gives you a GraphViz file, and you can actually look at internals of Arel that way. So in this particular case, we are looking at a table called people and selecting everything, and we are just looking at how internally Arel objects are structured. So at the top, it's a select statement. This is what you would expect. It does not have any limit or offset. It doesn't have any specific order. And at the core, there is a select. Of course, it's a select statement. And there is no window, there is no where. There's one projection, which is of type attribute, and the value is star. This star is what is becoming a people.star. And obviously, this attribute is coming from this table. The table's name is called people. And eventually, Arel is visiting this tree and converting into a SQL statement like that. Now, let's look at one thing at a time. So, let's see what changes if we added an order. So, we are going to say order by name. So that, and let's draw the diagram. So in this case, what you will see, the rest of the tree hasn't changed much, except that the order now has more specific. It's saying this is ascending order using an expression, and the attribute's name is name, and of course this attribute, every time you see an attribute, it relates to a table. So it comes from a table called people. So this is again a select statement, everything else remaining same. Now we have added an order. We can try the same on limit. By the way, you can try the SQL the same, and you see that select people start from people, order by people, name ascending. So what if we did a limit? So limit of 1, let's try that. You see that the SQL is, in this case, just adding a limit query. If we do a toDot, then what you will see is, of course, there's no more orders, but now we have a limit instead of a null. Now we have a limit that is bound to a parameter, which is where the question mark is for SQL. So you can experiment with all kind of different conditions, like, so if I have this, then I have a new graph. In this case, I'm looking for all people where the age is more than 10. And you see that now we're still selecting star, but what has changed is the where conditions. Instead of a blank array, now where condition has an and. Of course, there's just one, and it's an expression. And we don't see the value right away because it becomes, if you see the SQL again, this is the SQL for it. So now we could do something more interesting. Let's try, see what happens. We do that. So now it becomes a question mark instead of 10. And let's see if that diagram changes at all. So in this case, it was just an expression, which is a string expression, and this is just showing you the string ID. So what you see that the node now, it has more information. It knows that it's an equality. And then on the left side, it's age, and on the right side, it's a value, which is different from previous where it was just a string. So Arel didn't actually look at the content of a string, but it looks at the attributes and the values when you pass it a hash. So interestingly, now if you look at how the SQL and dot, I found this visitors, and then there are different kinds of visitors, and so there's a dot visitor and there's a SQL visitor. But also if you are using different kind of databases, the generated SQL will change based on that. So overall, I found that the dot diagram helps you understand the internals of Arel. It's a brilliant idea for someone new to Arel to get used to it. And overall, I think this source code is so beautiful. Once you have this diagram, you have a very good understanding of the internals of it. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm joining from Starbucks this is a Starbucks as a part of a bookshop in Calgary. And thank you for watching again.